abbey, and I see the Camino symbol and the shell symbol, and they had a little thing about St. James and Hildegard. I didn't know I could do a pilgrimage, and I learned as I walked. I was more resilient than I realized. I felt free in ways I'd never felt before. It literally changed. As much as the other experiences have been special and I treasure that first one, just shook up my life in really good ways. Kind of hunting through town to see if anything's open, and nothing. And then all of a sudden I find a gas station that has a little shop that has fruit and nuts and even coffee. I thought was really beautiful. Or watching two pilgrims connect, and one of them says the word, the phrase, the thing that the other person needed to hear that unlocked something new for them. I don't want to be done. And yet, we can't live on the pilgrimage our whole lives. We do have to come home. And so, but we will have to grieve when you feel the time's right. Don't say no. Don't refuse the gift. Go. Because I do think if the Camino's called you, the Camino will let you know the time.
Hey, hello, pilgrims. Welcome to the Way to Your Wife podcast. Today we have with us Jen Manglos. She have like a lot of activities related to the Camino, and she has been walked several Caminos. The first one was in 2018, and she has been leading groups going to the Camino, with the biggest one of 9 people under her group. And she also wrote a book recently this year that was finally published. And she was also, I met her when we went in a gathering that was led by American Pilgrims on the Camino and the Canadian Company of Pilgrims. She was doing like a kind of exposition about the Camino. And so we're going to be asking several questions to her. She's also pastoring around her neighborhood as well. And then we're going to start it. So welcome, Jen. How are you doing today?
Oh, thanks so much, Efrain. It's really good to be here. Seattle in summer, that's where I live, is lovely. So I look out my window and I can see the mountains. It's a good day.
Okay.
How about you?
Because you live in Seattle, you were very close to Vancouver when was the
It
gathering,
was so
right?
easy. Yeah, it was 2-hour drive, if that.
Okay, well, and how is the cold there in Seattle when it's winter time?
Oh, it's gray all the time. The sun sets really early. Everyone just goes inside and hibernates.
Okay.
So it's a little miserable, but it's the price we pay for really beautiful summers.
Oh, that's nice. And now we're at the time of summer. This is probably going to be around end of the fall published, but now it's time for summer. We are almost in August. Today is July the 30th, 2025.
Can't believe it.
Yes. Okay, and you recently came from a Camino, right?
I did. I led a group on the Camino Portugues from Vigo to Santiago, and then I checked out a new trail in Germany for Hildegard of Bingen, who's this really fantastic German mystic saint from the medieval times.
Okay, and did you walk that Camino in Germany as well, or you just check it out?
I walked 3 days. I was supposed to walk a little longer, but I hit my wall, so I ended up busing the last bit, but got to walk 3 full days, and it was beautiful.
Okay, and how did you find out about that Camino in Germany?
So one of my friends with American Pilgrims on the Camino, I'm on the steering committee of our local chapter, the Puget Sound chapter, shout out.
Okay.
And one of our members talked about walking it, and something in me went, ooh, listen, this might be for you. And when she got back, we went for coffee and she told me about this trail, and I knew I needed to walk it. So yeah, and then I started learning a lot. And I'm still learning a lot about this trail, but it was I figured if I was already over in Europe this summer, I might as well pop up to Germany, and I'm so glad I did. It was a really beautiful experience.
And do you know that the majority of the Caminos that are in Europe are somehow connected, and at the end all go to Santiago? So
Yeah.
Is that one connected as well?
So it's separate, but the Camino connects into it right at the end. And there's this abbey for Hildegard in Rudesheim up on Rhine. And all of a sudden, I get to this abbey and I see the Camino symbol, the shell symbol, and they had a little thing about St. James and Hildegard, and it felt like my two worlds colliding.
Okay. See, I have here a symbol and a post, and this is the distance from here, Raleigh, North
Yeah.
Carolina, to the cathedral.
Oh, I love that. This is my symbol I carry with me all the time.
Okay.
There you go. You can kind of see it. It's the trail
Okay.
marker, so I always know where I'm going.
Okay, so that's really really nice. So that's super cool. And okay, and how many Camino have you walked since 2018 until now?
So I walked the entire Frances in 2018. I walked Santiago to Murcia. I actually didn't go to Finisterre. I went straight to Murcia. And then I walked the last portion, Sarria to Santiago. I've walked, I started in Barcelos on the Camino Portuguese Central, and then had a group join me last year for the last 100K. And then this year I did Vigo to Santiago. And last summer I also walked St. Cuthbert's Way in the UK, which is a trail that leads to Lindisfarne or Holy Island.
Okay, and all those experiences that you have had, and you have been leading several groups during those times. So, any Camino in particular that you have joined more than other ones?
I mean, the OG one for me, 2018, the Frances, that was life changing. Every pilgrimage since has been really special in its own way, but I didn't know I could do a pilgrimage. And I learned as I walked, I was more resilient than I realized. I felt free in ways I'd never felt before. It literally changed my life. So as much as the other experiences have been special and I treasure, that first one just shook up my life in really good ways, and I'm not the same.
Okay. And what made you to say that first Camino that you walk, I'm gonna walk the Camino?
It was years before, in 2012. I just started working for a church, and one of my coworkers mentioned this film called The Way.
Okay.
And actually Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez had visited the church before I worked there to show the film to staff.
Okay.
And when I mentioned I was a fan of The West Wing, my friend said, "Oh, you should watch this movie, The Way," and sat down and watched it. At the time, it was on Netflix, and the movie finished, and I heard, who I'll say was God, but I heard this voice say, "You're going to walk this." And I was kind of surprised because I was never an athletic person. I get the reputation now because I take these groups and I go every year almost now, but I was the least athletic person ever. I have major back issues. I love to travel and I do enjoy walking, but I never would have picked that for myself. But when I felt the invitation, that call to Camino, I went, okay, yeah. But I can't now because I just started a new job. So I figure when the time's right, I'll know. And so over like the next 6 years, I would learn about the Camino. A friend of mine walked it and I just followed his journey.
Okay.
And every few months it would get stirred again for me. And then in 2018, I would every year at January, I take some time to reflect on the past year, to process through, to release, and then to kind of think ahead and consider what's this year inviting me into. And 2018, I thought, maybe this is the year. And it felt both an insane thing and also felt very right. And so I kept talking with some people I trust in my life because I knew I wanted to walk the whole Frances.
Okay.
And in the US, we don't always get good vacation time. I was decades away from retiring. I was in my late 30s at the point. So I knew I would probably need to do this between jobs. Okay. And so I was ready to move on from my next job. I was thinking, okay, it's January. If I walked in September, maybe it'll be less crowded. It wasn't, but I thought that.
Okay.
And I figured it would give me all that time to prepare. And so I worked through to the end of August, quit my job with notice, and went and walked the Camino. And
Okay.
it was really great because it felt like my entire community just had my back. It was, in a
Wow.
sense, they came with me. I actually asked them all to give me patches for my backpack
Okay.
so that I could remember these people who believed I could finish this walk, even if I didn't think I could.
Okay.
And so I had this real colorful backpack that I called Tina Fey, because Tina Fey, who great comedian and writer, she was the first female head writer on Saturday Night Live, and I love female trailblazers, so my
Okay.
backpack was named for her. And so with these patches, I went and walked and discovered I could finish a Camino and do things I never thought were possible.
Wow. That's super cool. All that happened. And then when you walked that Camino, that was the first one. Were you by yourself, correct?
I was.
Okay. So was like a you expected to be, or a lot of things happening that you were not expecting?
There was so much unexpected. In my mind, pilgrimage meant you suffer. And there were times where it felt like suffering in terms of the exhaustion, especially those first week or two where your body's just adjusting to the pilgrimage. But I never realized how fun it would be and how much I would love it. I got to the end and wanted to keep walking. I loved getting to meet people from all over the world, to see Spain in that kind of way where I'm not just zooming through a town, but I'm actually getting to talk with people, discover the culture. Every part of it I just was loving. I will say, I think I expected too that my body wouldn't be able to handle it. I have scoliosis and metal rods attached to my spine. So I didn't know how my back would do with this kind of experience. Um, and so I think until Cruz de Ferro, I was holding this expectation that I would at some point have to stop, that
Okay.
I would get such a bad injury, some way, shape, or form, my body couldn't hold out, that I'd have to stop. And so I remember walking up. I was going to do Cruz de Ferro the next morning, but I did most of the climbing and stayed in the town right before. And I had this realization that in that moment, I was going to finish.
Okay.
And I realized how much I'd been holding on to this thought that you can't do this. Something will go wrong. And so it was this interesting expectation that I didn't know I was carrying that got revealed. And I discovered I could walk it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is amazing how people think about the Camino before walking, and when you are there, I don't know. It's like I don't know if it's something magic or what it is, but it's something spectacular because it's not just one person that say that. There are a ton of persons that say that, and a exact example is when we were on the gathering. You see how much positive energy was there. Everybody talking so excited about the Camino. And in the Camino that you walk, that one, the French Camino, uh, you went to Osebreiro, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that you need to go up the hill, and it's kind of high. It's not. I understand that because I have not walked that entirely. I have walked just a portion, but I understand that it's not as high as the one for the Pyrenees, but it's still a strong hill.
Yeah.
And when you went to the top, I don't know if you met the priest that is there on that church. So I interviewed him, and on one of the podcasts is he there, and he mentioned that the best ambassadors from the Camino, are the pilgrims,
Mm.
because what do they live there? They wanted to transmit it to other ones.
Yeah.
Why would you say that is that?
I will say, when we encounter something that changes our lives in really profound ways, whether that's internally, externally, I think we can't help but share about it. You know, I come from a Christian tradition where when I was younger, it was like share the faith, share the gospel. But I think in a strange way, it's almost we share the good news of the Camino because there's not much in life that feels like this. I loved that on the Camino I could go up to strangers at a cafe and bar, and if they were pilgrims, I could ask them, "Can I join you?" And they wouldn't think twice. That was normal. Or if someone needs a snack or needs help, we have each other's back and we're curious about each other's lives, and we don't have to try to force our beliefs on each other, but we can just respect that we all are having a special experience here. There's so much about a way of life on the Camino that I think captures so much of what we all really hope and wish for, and that normal life doesn't usually look like. And so I think there's, and then there's these moments of Camino magic, which, or however you want to define them, where some sort of provision comes through in ways you never would have expected. When you find yourself at your lowest moment, there's a way forward, and when you've given up all hope of there being a way forward. And yeah, it's like I said, I think it just taps into this deep desire we hold that we don't often get to experience. And so when we do, we want to talk about it. We get excited.
Yeah. And then now relating that what you have been doing, because you mentioned that you have been pastoring and through your neighborhood. When you have been doing that, how do you connect the day to day from people's life with what the Camino pass when you are walking? So what would you say about that?
Well, when I first, so I when I walked my first Camino, I left my job and so was job hunting when I came back, and I ended up taking a pastoral role up here in Seattle. That's what helped me move from LA to Seattle. And I would often use it as I would preach sermons because it was such a good image of the journey that is life. This idea that we're always moving, that we're all kind of on our own journey. So I think that was starting to translate. But, I grew up where a lot of how I looked at life was through my brain. And I didn't connect as much with my emotions and especially my body. I felt quite disconnected from my body. So with pilgrimage, it was kind of fun to start really understanding some of the ways our body connected into our emotions, our thoughts, how our bodies are part of our spiritual practice. So it felt like it started to actually show up in my pastoral work, where I was like, I don't want to just talk about things. Like, how do we actually live and embody these things we care about, that we believe in? And I learned so much of just even how to be in my body and how to listen to my body by walking the Camino. As I move forward and I start to continue to integrate pilgrimage, pastoring, and some of this work I do as a spiritual director, it really is seeing ourselves not as separate boxes, like here's my brain box, my feeling box, my body box, but that it's all integrated. And then as humans, we're integrated to each other, to our neighbors, so that what happens to my neighbor actually matters to me. And so I think that a way of looking at things interconnectedly really started a pilgrimage and just kind of, you know, rolls out into every part of my life. Like, again, it's like as I experienced things so integratedly, who I am and how I showed up began to become more integrated as well.
Yeah. And it's amazing how it's connected with the whole life. And we're talking the whole life. The best definition that I find for the Camino is from another priest, and I'm trying to interview him as well, but he wanted to be interviewed, but he's been very busy because he also has an albergue in the Camino del Norte. And you
Oh,
know that
wow.
right now he's very busy because right now is the big season for the Camino. And he defined, I read that he defined the Camino as the university of life.
Oh, yes.
Because everything that happened in life, you can live it somehow on the Camino.
Yeah.
And then you also have a lot of time for you to reflect who you are, what you wanted, how you can be better, how I can solve things that sometimes when I just on my daily routine, I'm thinking, rethinking, and I don't find a solution. But when you are working on the Camino, and this is not necessarily the Camino de Santiago, this is any Camino that you have time to walk by yourself. So you have time to think in an easy way.
Yeah. It's why I think pilgrimage and retreat actually have some shared DNA. I've often will guide people on retreats, and they're both such an interruption of our normal life patterns. Because my normal life pattern here is I wake up, I have some coffee, I start to check my emails, maybe I have a meeting. But on the Camino, I live such a different and simpler life. I wake up, I'm still searching for that cup of coffee, but all I have to do that day is walk and be attentive to what comes my way. And that kind of spaciousness, it lets my life breathe in ways it doesn't get to when I'm so busy and so structured and so like, what's next on my calendar? And I find that similar on retreat, but it's disruptive in a way, a good disruption, but it really disrupts like our normal patterns. And I think that's what actually allows it to be pretty transformative as well, because when we get so stuck in these patterns of life, we just almost go autopilot. And when it's disrupted, it gives us space to consider, oh, is this actually how I want to be living? Or to listen to these intuitions in ourselves that maybe we've shut down. I wish everyone could experience some aspect of this, whether that's pilgrimage, whether that's retreat, whether that's something at home, but that way of creating a spaciousness to listen to our own lives, sometimes I'll tell people when I'm guiding them on groups, I don't have us read a book per se. We might have a guidebook, but I say, let your life be the book you're reading as you walk and discover what are the stories you've held onto that maybe you didn't know? What are the new stories you might be discovering? There's a lot to discover if we just spend some time listening to ourselves and listening to others. But if I'm honest, even as a person who values this normal life, I have to fight for that. And when it's pilgrimage, the stage is set for it.
Yeah. And it's like everything came by itself. You don't know how, but somehow it happened. I have another person who I recently interviewed that she say that she always wanted to keep fruits with her by walking the Camino. But somehow one day she forgot about it. And she said that in the Camino, so many fruits around, she found it that she was able to have her fruits, even that she forgot about. And there are another person that I interviewed that she said that she was walking and there was a lady that was in front of her walking, and that the husband of that lady was with walking with the hair and not with her with his wife, and she was worried about the wife because he said he's walking with me, not with her wife or his wife, and then she was kind of worried. And suddenly, when finally she met the lady, the other lady when asked about the name, she said that the name was the same name about her friend that she was thinking about that passed away already. So those are a lot of coincidence that you don't know how does that happen at that moment.
Yeah. I once was, when I came, first time coming back to the Camino in 2023, and I spent a few days walking on my own to Murcia, and I was, I didn't know what to expect. I knew the trail would be quieter. I was walking on a Sunday, and some things in Spain could be closed on Sunday, so I didn't know if I would be able to get food, and I was holding a lot of anxiety over it. It was my second day of walking. And the albergue I'm staying at, I asked for breakfast the next morning because I didn't know if I'd have food options. And I'd had to have let them know the day before, but it was also a not great breakfast. So I'm really anxious, and I'm, kind of hunting through town to see if anything's open. And nothing, nothing, nothing. And then all of a sudden, I find a gas station that has a little shop that has fruit and nuts and even coffee. Because let's be honest, that's the thing I'm really searching for when I get started. And I sat outside eating my gas station breakfast, but I was so grateful. Like, okay, I was so worried and I forgot the Camino provides. And
Yeah.
and then it got even better because so I was okay, it's gonna be all right. And I'm walking, and about halfway through my day, I see this van pulled over to the side. And I see this woman I'd been at the albergue with the night before. And she'd mentioned her parents were driving along as a support vehicle for her. And so they had in their van, they had an espresso machine. They
Wow.
had they had food, fruit, like a real nice selection for her. But she sees me, and I come over, and I get a really good cup of coffee, and it just felt like the Camino showing off. Here you thought you'd have nothing, and not only did you get the basics, but you got even more. And it's one of my favorite stories. It's like I need to come back to that in normal life because I so often am afraid that there won't be enough. And yet every time I walk the Camino, I'm surprised by these moments where I have what I need and have even more. I have enough to share.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And then from those group that you have led, I imagine that you have led a lot of people during those 7 years. And do you remind any comment that any of those people that have gone with you have said to you that you say, well, this is something memorable?
Oh gosh, there's so many moments. Sometimes I get to witness them. On this most recent trip, so it was a small group. We ended up having a lot of physical injuries. We ended up with half of our group with ankle injuries. They were able to still walk, but they sprained their ankle. And one of the people sprained their ankle, and it hit a deep place for them, and we were talking through it a little bit, but a little later, they realized they did need some help. They needed some pain medicine. They needed to wrap their ankle. And I'd actually just learned how to wrap ankles at the gathering where we met, Efrain.
Okay.
Uh, and so it was kind of this beautiful moment where she's sitting down, and she's a person who, is always taking care of herself and always been really responsible and capable. And she needed the help of her pilgrims. And so I was wrapping her ankle. Someone else was getting her pain medication. Someone else was holding her things and getting her some water. And I loved watching what that did to her, like in real time, how it shook something loose in her. So, I don't always get to see those moments happen with people I lead, but that one I thought was really beautiful. Or watching two pilgrims connect, and one of them says the word, the phrase, the thing that the other person needed to hear that unlocked something new for them. So what's kind of fun is, as the group leader, sometimes I'm actively involved in those moments for people, but a lot of times I'm just watching it. I'm just like the fly on the wall, because it's really not me that's making any of this happen. It's the Camino. So the less I try to control things, the more I get in the way. So the more I step back, I can just watch these things play out and kind of just highlight to someone, isn't that great? Look at what just happened. Which makes it a lot easier for me. It's a lot more the flow of the Camino.
And it's amazing how all that work out very good. And it's naturally as well. So it's like everyone's, without telling anything, they just wanted to go into action.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, like I said, I come from a background where I was always having to be the responsible person, and I could always step in. And what's fun is seeing how it's not all on me. So I learned, as much as people are learning as they walk with me, I learn things for myself every time as the leader. And how do you just let the flow happen rather than interrupt it?
Yeah. How cool it would be if like that happening in a work environment as well?
Right. I know. I think we all should start teaching workshops to like corporate environments.
Yeah. Yeah, there is opportunity there because
Yeah.
there is too much. Sometimes when you are working, uh, people are so stressed and worry so much about things that are very simple to get solved. And then if you work and all those principles that are on the Camino, you put it together in a corporate environment, then
Yes.
it's gonna be easy to work as a teamwork. As you just mentioned, that happened with the sprint the ankle. So everybody was working like a team, and nobody said you need to do this, you need to do that. No, it was probably spontaneous, right?
I mean, we talk about Camino families often when we talk about the Camino, and it's beautiful to see a Camino family care for each other and become this kind of organism. Which, yeah, if that got unleashed in corporate world, that'd be that would be so transformative and powerful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I would like to talk with you is about your book.
Yeah,
I believe it's called the way back, right?
I brought
Something
a
like
copy right here. Yes, the way
uh,
back.
okay. Yeah. Well, first question: if somebody wants to buy your book, how do they can buy it?
They can go to Amazon.
Okay.
And if you're not pro Amazon, which I very much understand and support, you can go to my website, jenmanglos.com, and I have an option to sell them directly. And so less money is going into certain hands.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, so tell us a little bit about how did you initiate to write that book?
It's funny. It's not the book I thought I was going to write. I knew I was going to write a book when I was walking my first pilgrimage. And I had an idea for a book, and I actually got to 100 pages in this memoir of my pilgrimage experience and got stuck. And so it's still sitting in my Google Drive. But gosh, the last couple years, as I spent some time in Santiago back in October 2023, not walking, but just observing a little what was happening, what some of the needs were when it comes to pilgrimage. And I started to see how hard that final stage of homecoming was for people. It was a place where people really got stuck, but it also was a place where there wasn't as much resourcing. There were some things available, and there's some great options in Santiago. If anyone's ever been to Pilgrim House, that's a great place to do some debriefing. And also, I think it's room 6 in the Pilgrim office. They have debriefing groups with some fantastic Catholic nuns and other spiritual directors. Um, but once you get home, it felt like there was less there to support people, and not even a lot of conversation about actually how hard it legitimately is. So I was starting to pick up on that. I was remembering my own experience and what helped me come home and the people who helped me process through my experience. And then I was seeing it with the groups I was starting to lead, where people just came home and hit some places sometimes of depression, or just went and planned the next trip. And I don't think it's bad to come back to the Camino by any means, but I do think sometimes we plan that next trip so we have something to look forward to rather than finishing our experience, kind of letting it, soak into our lives before we move on. So I was seeing a lot of that. And then because I'm a spiritual director, I help with people often in times of transition, often in times of question and uncertainty. And sometimes I'll invite people to engage with some practices and rituals and reflection questions. So it kind of took a lot of my background, some of the noticings I was finding on pilgrimage, and that started to come together. And so I started creating some of the content in the book just for the people I was walking with and going, I want to help them come home well. And then it kind of started morphing into this idea of, well, what if this is a book? This might be needed for my fellow pilgrims. If nothing else, to normalize that the pilgrimage doesn't end when you finish walking, but that there is this final stage that matters. I Phil Cousineau's book, The Art of Pilgrimage, he calls it that stage, bringing home the boon, and this idea of bringing home the gifts we've gained and received on the pilgrimage, and not just letting them hang at the end of the pilgrimage, but actually to be brought home because they need to. You need those gifts for your life, and your community probably needs them too. And so it really started to energize me. And then we had this upcoming gathering for American Pilgrims on the Camino and the Canadian Company of Pilgrims. And they were asking for speakers, and I submitted myself to talk about this whole aspect of coming home. And they said, yes, come do that. And I was a little surprised, but really honored. And then I went, okay, I think I need to finish this book. So I took a lot of the exercises, and then I took some of my memoir that I started writing back in 2018, 2019, and started to bring some of that into this book. And some of the writing I was doing when I was coming back and when I felt so lost and was so dejected, when I would tell a story to a friend about the pilgrimage, and it would turn into 2-3 stories, and their eyes would glaze over because they didn't get it. And so it's really fun to look back on those writings and to see, gosh, even as I was wrestling through that, this kind of wrestling and this processing through is so needed for people. Heather Warfield, who's a psychologist who does a lot of research on pilgrimage, is talking about similar things of, we need support. We need our pilgrimage community as we come home. For a lot of us, our pilgrimage families helped get us to Santiago, whether that was people we walked with, people back home. And I think similarly, we need our communities as we bring this home, as we discover, what do I need to let go of? Like, what was just for me on the pilgrimage? And then to consider, what am I bringing home? What's necessary? And how do I make space for that? How do I weave it in? So I could go on forever, but that's kind of the journey and the pilgrimage itself of this book.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then it's also a very good way to support people that are pilgrims, that after they go through all that experience, when they come, because when you're in Santiago, at least I feel it that way. When you're in Santiago, your happiness is like here.
Yeah.
And then when you're coming back, you don't want to come back.
No.
But then when you arrive, it's even worse. Because then when you start going back to work, you start talking with everyone about your experience. And you want to keep talking. And they are like, what happened with Efrain that he's telling this about?
Yeah.
I know that he was well and all that, but they are not interested. Unless that they have been there.
Yeah.
And so it's important to support, because you don't want to be like that. You want to go a little slow down.
But honestly, even to have someone named to you before, coming back can be hard. Like, you might hit some depression. Your body might have some different responses. You go from walking all those kilometers every day to not. Your appetite might change. There's all sorts of things we're experiencing emotionally, psychologically, physically, that we don't always get prepared for. And so even just to have someone normalize it and say, yes, what you're going through is normal, can be so relieving, because then it's not just me. There's not something wrong with me. It's, oh, this is what it is to come home. I grew up going to camp every summer for about a week. And similarly, you'd have that camp high where, oh my gosh, this is great. And then you'd get home, and within a couple of days you would tank. And I've done some, I've lived overseas as well. And similar, that coming home was always so rough. And I think there's this part of like, at least within US culture, like we're a culture that doesn't know how to grieve often. And there's a grief involved with coming back. I cried like a day or two before I finished my pilgrimage. I didn't want to be done. And I sat, we were having our coffee in the morning before we started walking, a group of us, and I just wept. I don't want to be done. And yet we can't live on the pilgrimage our whole lives. We do have to come home. And so, but we will have to grieve. And it's nice when we know that it's normal to grieve. It's normal to feel the loss, but that the loss isn't the end of the story.
Correct. That's absolutely right. Well, we're getting to the end of the conversation for today. And what would be your final advice to that person that wanted to walk the Camino, but keep postponing that trip further and further?
You know what? Because I get that question a lot from people who are considering walking. I will say, if the Camino has called you, you will know when the time's right. But when you feel the time's right, don't say no. Don't refuse the gift. Go. Because I do think if the Camino's called you, the Camino will let you know the time. For me, I know it was a 6-year gap between me knowing I was supposed to walk and actually walking. And that time felt really right for me. So sometimes we need that time and space. But I will also say, this last year, I lost a friend who is a pilgrim, and she was my neighbor. We connected at a American Pilgrims on the Camino walk. And she had just finished her first one. I was coming back to do my second. And she knew something wasn't finished in her walk. She needed to go back. And she went back that next year. And when she came back, she had this cough that wouldn't go away. And she ended up passing away. It was lung cancer. It was real quick, like about 6 months from her returning, she passed away. And seeing that reminded me of, our time is short and we don't know what the end date will be. And so if that call for the Camino is there and you sense that it's time, don't put it off. And I'm not saying that means you have this diagnosis coming up, but I will just say our time is short. And I'm so grateful Betsy walked. And when she came back, there was something that was finished and something that was completed by her going back. I'm so glad she listened to it. She got to finish with no regrets. And for me, I continue to hold on to that. Like, I don't know what tomorrow will hold. And so if it is time, it takes some courage, but say yes, because it is worthwhile.
Yeah. And I can talk for me that I've been 3 times in the I've been always walking short caminos. But on those 3 caminos, the experience has been fabulous. And I've been with my wife on those 3 times. And her spirit is even higher than mine.
Wow.
So it's like for her, it's like she's in a totally other world. And she's super happy, super excited. And actually, she's going to be walking by herself. The Frances, she's going to be walking from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Triacastela.
Yeah.
And then from Triacastela, she's going to go to O Pedroso because you know that right now, the Compostela, you still can get it even if you don't continually walk. They are trying to descongest the last 100 kilometers.
Which is good. It needs to happen.
Yeah, the last 20 are going to be still a lot of people, but not the last 100.
Yeah. That's so exciting for her. And especially getting to start from Saint Jean. That's, I mean, the Pyrenees are tough, but it's beautiful. And it's a great place to begin.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much again, Jen, for your time today. And for you, pilgrims, thank you for watching our episode. And please include your comments on the comment section, asking for what kind of topics you would like to see in future episodes. That way we will try to have a guest to talk about those. Thank you very much and buen camino.